So if I hit go live and I stop streaming that way, and hopefully this has worked as a nice seamless transition, and the people watching have seen us transition over. There we go. It has, it's worked. So I guess hello to everybody who's been watching, and thank you for watching. I'm Martin Williams, and would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Sarah McCourt.
Sarah played Dickens, for those of you who've just watched. Yeah, you can put comments in Facebook if you want to chat to us, but we thought we'd just spend a little time talking about the show and how we put it together. How was the experience for you, Sarah? Because I know you've done other stuff similar to this, like online performances. How was it for you?
It was quite a different challenge because the performances that I've done before online have been in Zoom. And one of the really exciting things about using StreamYard is the fact that you could fly us in and out and fly the screens in and out, which made looking in particular directions really important. And it was really exciting and sometimes we do a couple of takes from different viewpoints. So it was a little bit more like working on film.
Yeah. I mean, for those who don't know, I did put it in the Facebook descriptions. We use StreamYard which is a streaming software. I think it's primarily designed for likes of podcasts and whatever, but like with Zoom being it's more difficult to control where people are. And, you know, one of the great things we've got with StreamYard is the ability to do all these weird and wonderful scene changes. So to be able to do those was great and have that flexibility. It gave us, as you say, a bit more like a virtual studio, which was fun. So, I mean, directing it did feel like I'm learning more about film than I am about doing theatre again. I mean, what are Zoom performances like to do for you? What have they been like?
What
have Zoom performances been like for you? How have they been, sort of with lockdown and everything?
They've been interesting because different people take different approaches. So some of the ones I did with The Show Must Go Online, the Shakespeare project, we were using our houses so the people carrying laptops around, walking down corridors, and that gets quite complicated. But this has been nice because it's been more sort of seated. But you still get some of the dynamics, and a lot of the things are still the same. So very often it's like if I want to look at Martin, I actually have to look in the opposite direction to Martin. So I'm actually looking in the opposite direction because everything's reversed, which is very confusing to get your head around.
Yeah, the mirroring of camera is difficult. I mean, that didn't help with direction because it was one of those things of I had to guess at which way you needed to look. I had to try and work it out myself, which was not the easiest thing.
But what's lovely is with Zoom, especially if you're live streaming, you actually have to wait for a cue. You have to rehearse it both ways and wait for a cue to let you know which way the screen has appeared on the stream, and that's an absolute nightmare because you don't know which way you're going to look. At least with this new which way I was going to look, which was nice.
Yeah. I mean, have you enjoyed the show? Because I've certainly enjoyed directing and watching you all create your characters. I mean, it's a shame Amy and Joe, for really good reasons, work reasons, and aren't able to be with us. And there's no better reason to not be somewhere than, you know, working. But have you enjoyed it?
I really have, and what an absolute privilege to play a character like Charles Dickens. It's not something that I ever saw myself playing, and the more I kind of researched it, I got really fascinated by him and his little habits and how sort of neat and tidy he was, and his experience with the train crash and all of those things. Really, really interesting stories. And
it did pour his life into his work, though, which was just incredible stuff.
And I really love the way that got captured in the script. There's so many little details in there. The more research I was doing, I'd be like, oh, that's in the script and that's referenced in the script, which I thought was really nice. It sort of really made that link between his work and his life.
I mean, Fiona and I, when we put together the show originally, like Joe picked it up fantastically during one of our rehearsals, where he said in the script there's a moment where Fiona and I had been talking to each other. So as we've been sending across drafts, we put little notes into the stage directions. And one of them I'd originally put that Dickens was drinking tea, or that we'll have Dickens drink tea, and that's our way into the interval for the live show. And Fiona had found this piece of research, this letter that Dickens had sent, and was going on about how, no, actually he drank coffee unless he just finished writing, in which case he drank hot chocolate, which is one of those things we managed to get into the script quite nicely. But yeah, he's got so many weird little habits, and like reading his letters, mate, you feel like you know the man, or at least I did when I was writing it. And because we've both played this role. I played it when we first produced this, when Off-Book first produced it, 9 years ago now, and you're doing it in the new improved version of the script. So it's quite nice, I suppose, talking to somebody else who's done Dickens, because it's a lot of lines, it's a lot of words.
Did you find it particularly challenging to direct somebody else in a role that you've already played yourself? Because that's quite a different experience, isn't it?
I think I don't remember performing Dickens as much as I'd like to. You know, when you act in a show and you come away with those stories, and all actors have got them, you know, it's for us in this one, as we were doing Old Curiosity Shop, and as Quilp was happening, when we were in the Lantern Theatre, sadly now closed in Liverpool, the lights went out middle of a scene. And it's stories like that abide with me. During Sykes and Nancy, in our first performance of this, Fiona stepped on the hem of her skirt and ripped it. And what I heard sitting on stage as Dickens was a crash off stage, because I didn't know what had gone on. And what's happened is Fiona has fallen down some stairs or some steps backstage. She's fine, but she's fallen down steps backstage. So I remember those moments. I don't actually remember much of what it was like to perform Dickens. So I think I had that distance that allowed me more easily to help direct it. And it's one of those things, like Dickens, over the course of his life, there were so many different versions of him. There's his early life, Dickens, I want to be an actor, to Dickens writing and his passionate political stuff. And then later on, his he gave it all to his performed readings. And I think that meant that as a director, I've got choice and you've got choice as an actor. So that, you know, we can get an authentic sense of who the man was. So I don't think it hurt any. I think time probably has helped as well. Having almost a decade difference, that's really helped. I mean, do you think it would be difficult for you if you were to direct, you know, positing it, if you were to direct the show? Do you think it would be difficult for you?
I think that's the wonderful thing about acting, is everybody brings something different to a character. Although, because there's a script there, and in this case there's a need to have some kind of pay some kind of tribute to the real person. So I think there's always going to be similarities, but I think actors also, you find people are multidimensional. So even if you're playing a real person, you're going to pick up different aspects of that person. And playing Dickens as a woman, I mean, that was quite challenging. And we weren't making any, we weren't covering that up in any way. So for me, it was about coming at it and going, how can I play Dickens as a woman without just doing some kind of masculine thing, but finding something that is still authentic within the character of Dickens. And what kind of, I often find there's something that roots a character for me. And for me, it was his neatness and a very organised desk. So I actually had, although it's not seen in the show, a very organised desk in front of me when I was working. And I had and it was about getting my fringe really, so I would wash my hair just before and brush it in a really, so that it was really tightly neat, and sort of the way that he had his hair. And that rooted something about authentic for me, about which covered both his habits and a little bit of his looks. But it would be different for every actor because you're going to make a slightly different connection.
You see, I think I had a moment like that. I don't know why, and it's never it hasn't happened to me since, and it's only happened to me on that first performance of Dickens. But on the premiere, I'd insisted right the way through rehearsal I was going to wear a proper bow tie, not a clip-on, not a dickie, a proper bow tie, and my hands were shaking so badly it took me ages to get it on. But the bow tie, the reason for wearing the proper bow tie was that's one of the things he actually presented it when he went out to do his readings. He did, and it was, I had this whole routine because I was wearing crepe hair on my face as well as a false beard and mustache, which I'm convinced looked terrible. I'm convinced it looked dreadful, but it's that thing of, with some shows, actors will tell you that the shoes make the character.
Mm.
And I think it's that kind of thing, putting those things on, they help you get into that character. I mean, on the sort of masculine or the gender issue, like I'm terrible as a director, and I realize that, and I should probably apologize because I don't help with that. My approach to it is I don't care what gender the actor is, the best actor gets the roles. And like you go through the shows that I've directed, Alice in Wonderland was an all-female cast. Treasure Island, it was women playing both Jim Hawkins and that's been the story of Off Book. It just so happens that that's who's got the role. With this, it was more of a sort of team and collaborative effort, but I think the way we broke down the characters worked actually quite nicely. And I mean, maybe I'm too close to it. I didn't see like, oh, it's an issue that there's a woman playing Dickens. It's like, but yeah, I'm not the most helpless director on that, so I should apologize.
I think these days there's so much fun to be had from casting in different ways, and I've done as a director myself, done a lot of unusual casting and been on the other end of it too as an actor. And I think what I look forward to is greater equality, because once we've got greater equality within the profession, we are going to be able as people to play much more creatively with how we cast roles. And I think that's an exciting place to want to be. And as people do more and more less expected casting, I think that's contributing to us getting to that exciting place.
Yeah, we need variety in our industry desperately. It's the one thing we don't have a lot of. And I mean, I love the ERA 50/50 campaign, although I do think there's a need to also represent those who maybe don't identify as male, female, or are going through transition. I think we need to address that somehow. And but it's one of those. I must say, I never set out with Off Book to make a political message or try and cast in that way. It's just that's the way it's always fallen down for me. It's the best person should get the role, and I think we need to. I think more companies could stand to do that. Just throw the idea of gender out the window. I don't think writers help sometimes, though. I've got colleagues from when I did creative writing at university who are baffled by the idea that sometimes in my prose or my genre fiction, I won't include gender. I won't gender characters because, and sometimes even with plays, I'll write them genderless. I'll write them as actor 1, actor 2, actor 3, because then anybody can play the role. And I understand why some writers are baffled by that, but I think writers who come in with a very specific idea, this is who the character is and it needs to be this, I wonder sometimes whether that holds us back as an industry. I don't know.
It depends. I think there's a need for both, because there are some very underrepresented lives in writing at the moment, and I think that's in a sense what I mean about us not being there yet, because those underrepresented lives need to be heard about before we can start having actors that maybe don't come from those backgrounds playing those. And that's another area that I think needs developing. But absolutely, I love playing with scripts where there's no gender and there's no race and there's no background at all about the characters. Those are some of the most exciting scripts to work on.
I think sadly we've got a long ways as an industry to go before we can get there, which is a bit of a shame. Like, I think where that's the ideal, to have every script be genderless, ethnicityless, whatever elseless. Like, I think that's that is a nice long-term goal, but in the meantime, we've got a lot of work to get done before we get there, which, yeah, it doesn't even feel close at the moment. Maybe that's just me.
Small steps.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, we haven't. I'm just looking to see whether we've had any sort of comments or questions come in on Facebook. We haven't, but if anybody does want to drop us a comment or a question, we can. I mean, is there anything that you sort of want to talk about the show and sort of about the process that we haven't talked about yet?
I think the writing of the show is quite interesting because you and Fiona obviously wrote the show 9 years ago and put a lot of research into it. And working online like this is a very different experience for writers, directors, and actors. And it changes the duration of the show. It's neither theatre or film, and it pulls together techniques from both and also demands a lot of new learning. So in a sense, talking about how you adapted the show, because you had to do quite a lot of adaptation after our first read through to just to get the dramaturgical structure to work online, which was quite interesting.
I mean, the original writing process was in some respects distant, because although Fiona and I met up in coffee shops every so often, by the nature of things, you both need to be sat at a computer. And at the time, we weren't really using things like Google Drive or any of these other things where you can collaboratively work on a document. So we were sort of sending each other scenes back and forth and leaving notes on the scenes. And so I think if I was to work with another writing partner in the same way, it would be quite a similar style. But yeah, there is that thing of trying to advertise this show. What the heck do you call it? What do you call a show like this? I have no idea. I've gone with virtual theatre or online performances because that feels right. And I mean, I know that there are people I've met through trade unions who have been doing online stuff for better part of a decade, and they're really good at it. But it does feel like, yeah, how do you describe this? Because I'd like to carry on doing this. I think even outside of lockdown, like, this form has legs to it. We don't have to pay for a rehearsal room. We don't have to pay for a performance venue, which means that we can create something, not on the cheap, but we can create something without a lot of the restrictions that we would otherwise have. You haven't got 5 actors traveling an hour each to come to a venue and then go home. So, you haven't got as much of a requirement, I suppose. But like in adapting, the main thing I tried to do with this one, because the original script, the roles were all very, very different. Like, Dickens by far had like 3 times the lines anybody else did. So the actor playing Dickens had 3 times the lines everybody else did. And what I did was take all the roles and try and redistribute them. So that the main thing for me was trying to make sure that every actor had about the same number of lines. Now, as we went through rehearsal, as you know, we ended up cutting bits, and I'd just go, you know what, that's rubbish, we're getting rid of it. And I don't like that, it's going. Which is a shame, but like there's a phrase in writing, you have to kill your darlings, and it is one of those things. You might love a piece, but you're going to have to get rid of it. In terms of sort of putting it together as to make it work from a dramaturg point of view, the main point was reacting to what was happening in rehearsal and what happened in that read through. Because, I mean, as you'll know if you've directed, the first rehearsal, the first read through can completely change your plan sometimes, even if it's only on a minor scale, but your plans will change. It's, no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy. Well, no director's plan survives first contact with the actors. It can't by necessity. I mean, Joe pulled out some amazing things like I don't know why I've never thought of it before, but I'd handed him a robe. In the script, it's a green robe, and he could have just changed the line and, he had on a brown robe, but he made a little bit of comedy out of it, and I couldn't have seen that coming. But you've got to keep, moments like that are gifts as a director. So I think if you have to be responsive, you have to be as reactive as actors are to each other as a writer and a director. You have to be that reactive if it's going to work. But the big thing with adaptation for me has always been, what's the story we're trying to tell? And with this, because we're telling such short stories, it allows you a bit more latitude in some ways as well. So being reactive is more possible in that format. I think that makes sense. I could just be waffling and talking out the backside.
I think looking at as we were working on it, it was interesting to see, because I think the bits that we really had to think about were the bits where we would have been interacting with the audience, and a lot of that, and sometimes things on sort of this medium seem very long, like long conversation, you know, long, and I think a lot of the things that we cut were the very long stretches of speech. Sometimes it's really nice to have them. Some of them were lovely to keep, but a lot, because there were so many, there was a lot of those got cut, and just those moments of that would work so well on a stage with a bit of business. The type of business that we were doing was very different.
Yeah,
I think that, you know, there was business like Joe's cloak, which was lovely, but the type of business is slightly different, and it's less out to the audience in a sense.
Yeah. I think that's the big shame, is without hearing, because when you're performing on stage, that audience reaction is a vital part of what you're doing. You know, a show is different every night because your audience is different every night. There are going to be some jokes every audience will laugh at. There are some jokes that every audience will laugh at, and then you get that one who just don't find that particular gag funny, and it just changes the energy of the show. And we don't have that here, which is, I kind of have to guess at what the audience are going to want and like, and hopefully I'll get it eventually. We'll see. But
it's on Facebook. Let us know. We're really interested. We want to know.
Please, because it does help us. We, you know, as I say, I'm going to do this show again somehow. Or I'm not going to do this. Well, we're going to do this show potentially again, but we're doing other shows in future. So won't be Dickens next time. Something slightly bigger. I had a crazy moment where I went, you know what, I have an idea now. I put out to a group of actors, as you know, the actors Off Book has worked with, and I put out to that group of actors and said, hey, would you be interested in any of these projects? And off the back of one of the responses, it's gone, I have a plan. So a season of smaller pieces of work surrounded by one show, I think will work quite nicely. So that's our next one. I think I'm going to start putting out news about that. I'm going to have to get onto that soon, because otherwise we'll run out of time to publicize it.
Watch this space.
yes. Watch this space. And send us ideas for any shows that you think would work this way, because that's useful. I would say send us your ideas of scripts, but I made that mistake recently on a playwriting group, and I had several hundred submissions. In fact, I put out a call on a playwriting group back in January. I got a submission today from America. Like, I am still getting submissions, but the fact is, unfortunately, that scratch workshop has been and gone. But yeah, I know better now than to say, hey, send us your scripts and ideas, because it's problematic.
But that's the lovely thing. It's like lockdown and pandemic has given us a lot of challenges as performers and as creatives, and not least of those is making this into something that will become an income for us as well. So if you want to keep seeing us do things, please keep supporting us. We can't do it without you. But
we can't.
We really can't.
If anybody, like, if you know it, if you've watched the show, and if anybody you know would enjoy it, you think, please point them to our Ko-fi site, kofi.com/offbooktc, because they can buy the show there, and you can download it to keep. So that would be amazing. Likewise, if you know any school teachers, English or drama teachers, we have English and drama educational workshops on offer for the show. So please promote those. Yeah. In the meantime, it's working on the next shows and trying to make sure that people want to see them. I did have a crazy idea for an improv one. Like, every actor, right, brings their own piece of inspiration, whatever it is. That piece of inspiration that an actor has brought gets given to another one of the actors, and they put the show together in a day. Whether it, this is a problem. I have ideas like this and then think, don't know whether or not I'm going to be able to make that work. We'll see.
So that's the wonderful thing, is that although there have been so many restrictions with COVID and lockdowns, what it has done with the artistic community, it is, in some ways, it has brought us closer together. So the fact that I can be working in Plymouth and you could be working in Liverpool, we can be working with actors in Australia and in the USA, and that's a really exciting thing. So I think that, and it allows us to be more playful and experience more work, and that's great for audiences like yourselves, all of you who are watching, that you've got access to a bigger range of work and a bigger range of creatives.
Definitely. And I think it helps as well. Sorry, I'm just, I've got like 3 different screens here, so I'm having to check them all to make sure everything's working, the joys of doing streaming like this. But no, I think that ability to work with so many different people is really, really good fun, because you can spread your net further, and there's quite a low barrier to entry, I think, as well. The only real requirement is, do you have a webcam that's a good, decent quality? Do you have a standalone mic? That, as a basic requirement, is fantastic. I mean, one of our actors didn't actually have a backdrop like we both have at the moment, but it still works, and that's fantastic. So the low barrier to entry, I think, helps, and it might even, I could see, present a new opportunity for those who are starting out in the industry, and I think that would be quite nice to see. For the meantime,
we've been discussing as people who've been in the industry for many years, is this year has been really tough for those that are just graduating from university or that are entering the profession for the first time. And we've seen a lot of young creatives out there, and some older ones who are coming back into the profession, finding it really hard. And so opportunities to be working online are being so valuable for them as well. And it gives them a chance, a little bit like the old rep companies, to be working with actors. And even mid-career, it's really exciting to be working with very experienced older actors and creatives who you learn so much from.
It's nice to change up the form. I think that helps. That's fun. I mean, I've taken up a good chunk of your evening by us having this little after show, but I will say it's very nice to have had this little chat, if nothing else, because normal show, we might have gone down the pub, or we might have gone somewhere afterwards as a cast and had a little after show party or a little after show relax. So it's been really nice to do this. Joe, Amy, we're missing you. Hopefully you don't mind that we did this without you, but we will catch up with you soon, I'm sure. For those who've watched the show as well, thank you for watching. Sarah, thank you for coming along. It's been so much fun to do this.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll say goodbye for now, everyone. Again, thank you for watching. And if you know anybody who'd like to see the show, or you think would enjoy the show, send them along to our Ko-fi shop, because we'd appreciate your support there as well. Bye for now.